Open cable systems is a growing trend in submarine networks, and taking part in a panel about this at Submarine Networks EMEA has been Wolfgang Moench of VIAVI. Wolfgang, thanks for talking to us. Just tell us about some of the sort of key opportunities and challenges of this part of the market.
Thanks, Brian, for introducing me. Well, I think the open cable market is a huge opportunity for the whole industry. It's primarily because it's a disaggregation between the wet plant and the dry plant, which opens up much more flexibility. So having a dry plant that can work with all kind of wet plants or vice versa gives us the advantage to use any kind of SLTE equipment with the wet plant, and opens up a more flexible configuration of the submarine cables, opens up a faster deployment and be more scalable.
So apart from this one, are there any other trends that you're seeing at the moment at VIAVI?
I mean, at VIAVI we are primarily a test equipment manufacturers, and therefore we are looking for how to test those new networks, those new signals. One of our latest deployments or latest solutions is a new correlation analyzer that can do in-band, in-service OSNR testing. And since there is a need for qualifying the wet plant in terms of all the parameters like chromatic dispersion, OSNR and nonlinearities, this is a new solution and a novel approach to measure linear and nonlinear distortions, and that's a very promising and interesting approach.
Yes, I mean, the test area is always really interesting because people get excited about new technologies, but you guys have to come up with systems to test them to make sure you're working. That must be a tremendous challenge.
Yeah, it is. Actually, it is a tremendous challenge because the systems change faster than we can follow. There is new modulation formats, there is new requirements from the industry, but one challenge is that the wet plant itself has a lack of standardization. So actually there is a new metrics to be defined and to qualify those wet plants, which is called GOSNR, Generalized OSNR. This is discussed in the industry, and this is actually also under discussion how to test. And we are one of the first to provide a test solution that directly can measure this G or Generalized OSNR.
Well, congratulations on that, because I know you guys are always at the cutting edge of testing. Where do you see the market going in, say, the next 12, 18 months?
Well, I think it's a continuous growing of the bandwidth, because the hyperscales are using bandwidth like hell. So they are doing artificial intelligence, cloud computing, all that kind of stuff. And they are globally organized. That means they need those interconnections primarily of transoceanic cables, and this is primarily a drive for submarine cables. That's number one. And number two, I think there is also a trend, or actually a move from the analog or from the amplitude modulation to a coherent transmission. So a coherent transmission enables to cope with impairments and do impairments compensation on the digital level. And that's all of those high-speed transmission links are using coherent transmission to enable this functionality and this benefit.
Why is an event like this important for you to attend?
Well, primarily there are two reasons. One, and that's for me the most important one, is to networking. I mean, there is a whole bunch of experts in this room, which is very difficult to get access to without traveling. So that's a nice venue here to meet all those experts, number one. And number two, of course, we also want to expose ourselves. That means we want to show to our customers what is the latest and greatest and how we can help them to solve their problems, and that's why we are here.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thanks, Brian.